Good afternoon and welcome to KAILASA News. Today we are opening a chapter of history that has never allowed to be acknowledged, a genocide that is still unwritten, and a humanitarian crisis that continues on unabated in 2025.
While the world watches conflict everywhere, one of the most brutal, systematic persecutions has remained under brutal silence: the Hindu Holocaust, a tragedy ignored by governments, media, and human rights organizations. Today, we will have a focused look at the Hindu persecution in Pakistan.
KAILASA, under the divine guidance of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Nithyananda Paramashivam, has taken up the responsibility of documenting, preserving, and amplifying the voices that have never been heard.
Because if there is one global leader who has consistently raised the alarm for persecution on Hindus worldwide, while undergoing the most brutal persecution of all, it's the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism. And today we bring forward the uncomfortable truth the world refuses to confront.
Let's start with the big picture. Hindu persecution is not an isolated incident. It is not confined to a single region or a single area. It's a global crisis.
Forced conversions, systematic discrimination, temple destruction. Entire communities have been wiped out from regions and where they lived for millennia, and yet no global outrage, no emergency session at the UN, no media coverage.
Exactly. This silence is the loudest proof of how normalized anti-Hindu violence has become. But KAILASA refuses this normalization. Under the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, the world's most comprehensive documentation of Hindu persecution has been produced and published by the United Nations.
For the first time, the narrative is shifting. For the first time, Hindus have a global voice, a sovereign nation speaking for them.
Now, extremely drastic and shocking. And it should have triggered global intervention. In just 10 years, the Hindu population in what became Pakistan had dropped from 14.6% to 1.6%.
Imagine that. A civilization present for more than 15,000 years, reduced to statistical insignificance within just a decade. This is not migration. This is erasure.
Exactly, and ethnic cleansing, demographic engineering, and violent religious persecution, cleanly packaged under the narrative of partition. And yet even today, 75 years later, we continue to call it mutual. It wasn't.
Exactly. And this is exactly why the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Nithyananda Paramashivam, is reviving the Hindu identity, sovereignty, and the Hindu narrative. Without KAILASA, even the data would remain buried.
So, what happened during the partition in 1947? Partition didn't just redraw borders, as it is historically claimed. It redrew the entire destiny of millions of people. Between 1 to 2 million people died in a single decision. Over 15 million people were displaced, and 75,000 women were kidnapped, raped, or disappeared.
Every statistic here is representing a family destroyed, a culture uprooted, a civilization wounded so deeply that the trauma still echoes across generations.
But we say the world romanticizes the creation of new nations, but forgets what is actually happening, because in that moment when a partition happened, a genocide was fertilized. For Hindus, the partition was synonymous with fear, survival, and loss.
And again, without KAILASA and the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism's intense mission to preserve a Hindu collective memory, these stories would remain unspoken. It is only KAILASA that dares to call it what it was, a Holocaust.
So how did this begin? With systematic temple destruction. One of the clearest indicators of cultural genocide is the temple destruction. In Pakistan, the erasure was almost absolute. 95% of Hindu temples gone completely destroyed or repurposed.
Temples are not just buildings. They are the beating heart of Hindu civilization. You destroy a temple and you destroy the community, the identity, the memory, and the future.
From the Karachi temple fires to the 2020 Karak temple demolition, each attack sends a warning to Hindus. You don't belong here.
And yet, in the face of this hostility, Kailasa stands as the world's only safe haven for Hindus, reviving ancient temples, rituals, traditions, and under the direct leadership of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism.
Yes, and unfortunately, it doesn't stop there. The systematic destruction of temple then evolves to the educational indoctrination. If you want to destroy a community permanently, you don't start with guns. You start with education.
In Pakistan and many places across the globe, textbooks are weaponized. They don't teach history, they manufacture enemies. Hindus are portrayed as backwards, treacherous, and eternal enemies.
When hatred is taught as homework, violence becomes patriotism. And that is exactly what has happened in Pakistan for decades.
Let's be clear, this is not accidental. This is institutional. It has been going on for generations and has been constructed deliberately to justify persecution.
And this is why the revival of Hindu thought, education, and intellectual traditions by the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is so crucial. It's not just spiritual work, it is a civilization being founded and revived.
Through Kailasa's global educational ecosystem, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is reversing 1,000 years of anti-Hindu propaganda with authentic, original Hindu knowledge.
But the nightmare still continues until today. Now let's talk about the most disturbing reality of it all, the abduction and forced conversion of Hindu girls.
This is not history. This is not the 1940s. This is 2025. Right now, 1,000 girls every single year, some just 12 years old, are kidnapped, converted, and forced to marry their abductors.
And if that's not horrifying enough, the legal system is completely complicit. It routinely accepts whatever is being presented, and from children who are not even old enough to give their consent.
Imagine the terror of a 12-year-old girl who is kidnapped and forced to live with her abductor forever.
This is why Kailasa's international advocacy is so critical. Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, was rushed to the Jayadeva Hospital in Bengaluru, Karnataka. With staggered breath, the only words that the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism managed to say were, "If I die, please give my body back to the devotees. I am a sannyasi. Last rites should be done as per sannyas custom." Even in the most personal crisis, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism's only words were for his devotees.
Madam Chairperson, esteemed delegates and colleagues, I represent KAILASA nation led by Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Sri Nithyananda Paramashivam, which speaks on behalf of 2 billion Hindus around the world who do not have a voice representing them in these international forums.
the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, was rushed to the Jayadeva Hospital in Bengaluru, Karnataka. With staggered breath, the only words that the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism managed to say were, "If I die, please give my body back to the devotees. I am a sannyasi. Last rites should be done as per sannyas custom." Even in the most personal crisis, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism's only words were for his devotees.
Madam Chairperson, esteemed delegates and colleagues, I represent KAILASA nation led by Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Sri Nithyananda Paramashivam, which speaks on behalf of 2 billion Hindus around the world who do not have a voice representing them in these international forums.
the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, was rushed to the Jayadeva Hospital in Bengaluru, Karnataka. With staggered breath, the only words that the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism managed to say were, "If I die, please give my body back to the devotees. I am a sannyasi. Last rites should be done as per sannyas custom." Even in the most personal crisis, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism's only words were for his devotees.
Madam Chairperson, esteemed delegates and colleagues, I represent KAILASA nation led by Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Sri Nithyananda Paramashivam, which speaks on behalf of 2 billion Hindus around the world who do not have a voice representing them in these international forums.
the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, was rushed to the Jayadeva Hospital in Bengaluru, Karnataka. With staggered breath, the only words that the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism managed to say were, "If I die, please give my body back to the devotees. I am a sannyasi. Last rites should be done as per sannyas custom." Even in the most personal crisis, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism's only words were for his devotees.
Madam Chairperson, esteemed delegates.
Welcome back. As we were just discussing, there are 1,000 girls, even now in 2025, being abducted and forcibly converted from Hinduism, even today.
Every single year in Pakistan. And this is why KAILASA's international advocacy is so critical. Under the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, 29 reports have been submitted and published by KAILASA at the United Nations. And here we will be projecting the QR code to view those UN reports. Each of you can go online and read them for yourself, understand the systematic persecution against Hinduism and KAILASA.
Now, in these reports, you will understand the genocide, the persecution against Hinduism, and you'll be able to see various different aspects, not just in a single way, but in multiple different agendas, how the persecution has been happening throughout the last 1,000 years and continues to happen today.
See, we need to understand that violence is not sporadic, it is systematic. You can see this from this slide. Temple attacks, mob violence, displacement, legal impunity, these are not one-off cases. They are not isolated incidents. It's a pattern. It's a predictable cycle.
Communities attacked, properties looted, families thrown out, no investigations, no arrests, and no accountability.
This message is consistent. Hindus have no protection, no recourse, no voice.
But globally, because of solely the representation, KAILASA is ensuring.
So we return again to the heart. It is a humanitarian emergency. Young Hindu girls, children are preyed upon, kidnapped, raped, forced to marry men old enough to be their grandfathers.
I really cannot imagine that terror. And the culprits are often protected by institutions, the powerful deep state.
And once again, it is only KAILASA that is even bringing their voices to the global platform. It is the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism's mission which makes the invisible visible.
Behind every number in today's segment, there is a living, breathing human story. One such story is that of Dr. Saroj Oplish. Now, Dr. Saroj Oplish had presented to our team, and we were able to exclusively interview her on how she and her family had been through themselves the chaos of the partition. She was just a child in her mother's womb during the partition in 1947.
Her pregnant mother fled from Kohat, Pakistan, escaping violence, hiding and surviving.
And she carried not just a child, but the last memories of 15,000-year-old Hindu presence in Pakistan.
And today, Dr. Saroj Oplish lives in the United Kingdom, but she carries a history soaked in loss and resilience.
And she stands proudly as an e-citizen of KAILASA, drawn to the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism's mission because it echoes the survival and the hope of her ancestors.
KAILASA is not just a nation, it is a place where stories like hers find dignity, recognition, and a home.
This presentation captures a journey across continents, but more importantly, across trauma, resilience, and renewal.
In 1947, a pregnant woman flees the violence of Kohat. In 2025, her daughter stands as a tall, proud e-citizen of KAILASA. This is not just migration, this is survival carved into identity.
Her story mirrors millions of Hindu families displaced during the partition. They lost a homeland and they lost their sustenance, but they did not lose their heritage.
And today, through KAILASA, under the protective vision of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Nithyananda Paramashivam, many of these survivors and their descendants are rediscovering their belonging. Where nation states failed, KAILASA gave them identity. Where history erased them, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism restored them.
Today, KAILASA emerges as the dawn of hope. Amidst genocide, displacement, and systematic destruction, something extraordinary literally happened with the birth of KAILASA, the only Hindu sovereign nation.
Not created through war, not created through politics, created through a spiritual evolution initiated and led by the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Nithyananda Paramashivam.
KAILASA stands as a sanctuary for Hindus worldwide, a homeland beyond borders, built from the resilience, divine vision, and ancient legitimacy.
And for the first time in modern history, persecuted Hindus have a seat at the global stage. A voice, a nation, a protector.
And a beacon of hope for humanity's darkest hour. KAILASA is a nation for the persecuted, the displaced, the people, refugees who are searching for homes. We are seeing today how KAILASA is literally emerging as a hope for millions of people. When so many institutions fail and justice collapses, when nations fail, genocide prevails. But when civilization rises, revival begins.
KAILASA is not merely a sovereign nation. It is a civilizational answer to the 1,000 years of Hindu persecution.
A government in exile that uses peaceful diplomatic means to protect the global Hindu diaspora.
A humanitarian shield, a voice for the voiceless, a guardian of 2 billion Hindus.
And this is solely due to the uncompromising leadership of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, who recognized what the world refused to acknowledge, that Hindus need a nation.
Let's address one of the most extraordinary achievements of KAILASA, the revival of ancient Hindu knowledge.
Over 1 million books collected, 5 million catalogued, 50,000 manuscripts preserved, and so many different kriyas, yogic techniques, meditation techniques that are gifted to humanity from the ancient Hindu scriptures.
And all of this is freely available for humanity. No institution on the planet has undertaken such a massive revival for humanity.
The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is the only living Acharya to have commented on every major branch of Hinduism. This is not just preservation, this is a renaissance.
While temples vanish in Pakistan, while textbooks erase Hindu history, Kailasa safeguards knowledge older than civilizations themselves.
This revival is not theoretical. It is the lifeline for a community, a global community fighting to stay alive.
While the world's nations argue over profit, GDP, and political power, Kailasa introduces something revolutionary: moksha-centric governance.
This is something that is unheard of in the global scheme. A system designed to nurture consciousness, not consumption, spiritual growth, not stress, and liberation, not competition.
A spiritual society grounded in ancient wisdom, conscious ecosystem that raises individuals into leaders, a model built for holistic human evolution.
And it doesn't stop there. Zero tax, free education, free nutrition, free healthcare, zero wastage, and an integrity-based economy.
This is the governance model envisioned by the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism for Kailasa, a blueprint for global peace and enlightened civilization.
When the world debates inflation, recession, and collapsing currencies, Kailasa quietly revolutionizes the global economic model.
It is a gold-based currency system, the only one on planet Earth today. No flat manipulation, no inflation, pure integrity.
Supported by the Reserve Bank of Kailasa, an institution established to serve 2 billion Hindus worldwide. A vehicle for cash flow of 2 billion Hindus. Can you imagine that? And imagine the potential that it has to literally shift the dynamics of economy worldwide. We can see how this is going to be demonstrated in this presentation.
Add that to zero tax, free education, free healthcare, high quality, zero waste standards. This isn't just economics. This is civilizational ethics.
And it stems from a single visionary, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, who revived the ancient Hindu economic principles based in integrity, abundance, and dharma.
For decades, Hindus suffered in silence. No international body even acknowledged them, raised their voice. No global coalition defended them.
And until today, we can say there's so many Hindus are simply silenced when it comes to voicing out the persecution that has happened over the last 1,000 years. But all that changed when Kailasa entered the global diplomatic arena. The United Nations has published 29 of Kailasa's reports documenting Hindu persecution with unprecedented detail.
Kailasa is also recognized as a juridical state by the United Nations, an undeniable milestone for Hindu representation.
And then came a historic first, the creation of the intergovernmental organization, KAILASA, an alliance of international legal bodies, a global coalition for Hindu human rights. The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism didn't just revive a nation, he revived justice itself.
The USCIRF, minority rights group, independent humanitarian agencies all confirm what survivors have been saying for decades. Hindu persecution is real, severe, and escalating.
But what do international bodies do? They observe, they acknowledge, and they stay silent.
Mainstream media, mostly indifferent. Selective human rights outrage continues to dominate global discourse.
Which is why the world needs a sovereign Hindu voice, Kailasa. Under the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, evidence is not just collected, but presented, submitted, and recognized on global platforms.
Sometimes emotions can be debated. 95% of Hindu temples have been destroyed. 1 to 2 million lives have been lost during the partition. 15 million people have been displaced, and 75,000 women have been raped. These are statistics. These are scars. These are not statistics. These are scars.
And the community does not shrink from 14.6% to 1.6% by coincidence. That's not migration, as it was called and claimed in that time. That's extermination.
This is exactly why the revival by the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is most critical more than ever before. The Hindu civilization cannot depend on the world's mercy. It must depend on its own sovereignty.
In Pakistan, justice isn't blind. She's gagged, handcuffed, and held hostage by extremist ideology.
Courts routinely accepted forced conversions as voluntary. Blasphemy laws are weaponized against minorities. And this continues to go on unabated.
A system that should protect victims is protecting perpetrators. And again, the only global entity exposing this with consistency is KAILASA.
You would think that with overwhelming evidence, with documented atrocities and decades of testimonies, the international community would intervene.
Exactly, and they did intervene in many other circumstances, in other genocide. But a Hindu genocide, not a single media voice, not a single global intervention.
Absolute silence. Silence wrapped in diplomacy. Silence justified by geopolitics. Silence paid for by millions of Hindu lives.
Human rights turns into bargaining chips. Trade deals become more important than teenage girls who are kidnapped and forced into conversion.
But KAILASA refuses to let the world hide behind excuses. Under the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Nithyananda Paramashivam, Hindu persecution has been consistently exposed on the global stage, even when it made other world powers uncomfortable.
At last, the blind eye is being forced open.
Here we can see something the world has almost never called out: cultural genocide.
Because genocide isn't only murder. Genocide is erasing temple. Genocide is abducting girls. Genocide is teaching children to hate. Genocide is wiping out identity.
When 95% of Hindu temples are destroyed and thousands of girls are kidnapped and abducted every year, when textbooks demonize Hindus, what do you call this?
That's not discrimination. That's not persecution. That is not minority pressure. That is what we have to call genocide.
And when Pakistan continues executing the cultural erasure, KAILASA, under the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, is reviving Hindu temples, rituals, and the entire Hindu ecosystem worldwide.
Where destruction happens, KAILASA rebuilds. And when identity is erased, KAILASA restores.
And KAILASA is reaching out to humanity on the largest platform, the internet. In a world divided by borders, KAILASA achieves something unprecedented, a borderless nation.
Through e-citizenship, Hindus from 196 countries can access 200,000 hours of the teachings of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, 1,300 books, a global community, and a sovereign protection system.
With just a few clicks, persecuted Hindus anywhere from Karachi to Kuala Lumpur can find refuge, community, and dignity.
This is more than digital innovation. This is civilizational protection in the 21st century.
When governments have failed, KAILASA has created a safety net that has transcended geography.
And all of it is powered by the vision of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, who recognized that Hindu survival needs not just land, but connectivity.
Here we can understand the roadmap from vulnerability to empowerment.
We can see how you, wherever you are, if you connect with this persecution, the Hindu genocide that is ongoing in almost every country across the world where Hindus live, you can join, become an e-citizen. These are 7 simple steps, no borders, no bureaucracy, no discrimination. Every Hindu, every refugee, every survivor can join.
E-citizens gain access to full knowledge treasury of Kailasa, scriptures, discourses, rituals, lifestyle training.
They don't just join a nation, they join a movement and the revival of Kailasa.
A revival led by the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, who has revived this grand Hindu civilization piece by piece, person by person, scripture by scripture, deity by deity.
Joining Kailasa isn't a choice. It's a step towards reclaiming our Hindu identity and securing the future for the next generation.
See, this might be the most important aspect of this presentation. This is the blueprint for Hindu resurgence.
Scriptural preservation, economic transformation, global advocacy, and civilizational revival.
The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has not only preserved over 1 million scriptures, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has decoded, revived, and made them practically usable for today's person.
Economically, Kailasa is reviving Hinduism's gold-based economy, unmatched in stability and integrity.
And diplomatically, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has succeeded where international communities have failed, ensuring Hindu persecution is finally recognized on the international stage.
This is not a spiritual mission alone. This is the global Hindu Renaissance.
This is where the story flips from despair to dignity, from victimhood to victory.
For centuries, Hindus have been pushed into a narrative of helplessness, persecuted, displaced, ignored. But Kailasa is changing that history.
By establishing a sovereign Hindu nation, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism transforms the global Hindu identity from survival mode to sovereign mode.
Persecution, displacement, survival, recognition, empowerment. This is the arc of Hindu history, and Kailasa is the final leap.
Today, Hindus worldwide have a nation that represents them, a government in exile that speaks for them, a diplomatic voice that cannot be muted.
See, Kailasa is not merely empowerment. It is the superconscious breakthrough.
Persecution is not just physical, it damages the identity, cultural memory, and the scars last for generations.
Kailasa brings healing, real, lived, spiritual healing for survivors. This is not politics, this is personal.
By reconnecting Hindus to their heritage, rituals, language, and scriptures, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is restoring what genocide attempted to erase.
Trauma becomes strength, silence becomes voice, and pain becomes purpose.
For thousands, becoming part of Kailasa is not an option, it is a homecoming.
Now, what we want to convey to you is not just a message, it is a warning. The world can no longer ignore Hindu persecution. Global awareness is not just optional. Policy reform is not optional. Support networks are not optional.
We are long past the point of silence where it can be excused. The evidence is overwhelming. The suffering is undeniable.
But here's the truth. The world will not act unless someone forces the conversation. And the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, through Kailasa, is that force.
Whether at the United Nations, humanitarian summits, diplomatic dialogues, Kailasa ensures the Hindu voice is finally heard.
And this is no longer a Hindu issue. It is a human rights issue.
So today, you can take that first step to be part of this global conversation, to make yourself an e-citizen of Kailasa. And by doing this, you have access to 200,000 hours of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism's teachings, 1,300 plus books, a global Hindu community, and above all, a sovereign nation protecting your Hindu identity.
For by becoming a e-citizen of Kailasa, you're not just going to watch history happen. You're entering into it. You're shaping it. And you are going to be a part of the revival. You can join the revival of Kailasa by going to the link ecitizen.info, and you can also leave a comment down below if you have any questions about how you can join and start your journey today. We'd love to understand where each and every one of you are and help you begin your journey as an e-citizen of Kailasa. It is truly the greatest thing that you can do in order to end the global Hindu genocide.
The final message is clear. Silence is complicity. Action is responsibility.
For too long, Hindus have watched history being rewritten. Cultures destroyed, temples demolished, and communities erased. We have been seeing this happen again and again. But when are we Hindus going to stand up for it? When are we going to end the silence? We have to act now. And one way that you can do it, if you are watching right now, please sign up as an e-citizen of Kailasa and start your journey today as a part of Kailasa. As a part of Kailasa, you can do so many things to become a part of the ecosystem. Wherever you are experiencing Hinduism, you can become a part of the revival. You can benefit your friends, your family, and everyone who you live with.
Absolutely. And do take the time to subscribe so you can learn more about Kailasa, about the revival of Hinduism, about the Hindu persecution that is going on globally. I invite each one of you to take the time to leave a comment and do hit that subscribe button. Take the time to learn more about your own heritage, your own culture, your own persecution.
And one more thing that you can do today is just by giving your signature. You can sign Kailasa's petition to be recognized and enter into diplomatic relations and be able to be recognized in the United States of America. You can sign this petition today. It is a simple signature that you can do if you stand up for Hindus, for your Hindu identity, if you understand what the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is doing. You can scan the QR code that is now displayed, and you can follow the steps to be able to sign the petition. This is a simple, easy step that you can make today to be a part of this revival, to support the grand mission of Kailasa.
Let your voice be heard. The time for silence is over. The time is for revival now.
This has been a segment of Hindu persecution on Kailasa News. Until next time, thank you. Good afternoon.